your student debt doesn't go away after you die, you know? And I think that's crazy.
I've got about $80,000 of debt right now, and so I don't really know when it's going to be paid off.
You know, you're putting these kids who are just out of school under a tremendous back-breaking amount of debt, and you provide them with no avenue to try to climb out of it.
American students are currently $1.2 trillion in debt, according to Forbes.
During the last legislative session in Minnesota in 2013, some people, including the faculty at MnSCU, argued for an increased funding for higher education. We ended up getting $240 million more money for higher education. And the argument against that $240 million in the Minnesota Senate and House was, we already put in $1.2 billion for MnSCU, roughly $2 billion for the University of Minnesota, approximately $1 billion for student aid. What else do they want? They get enough.
The average Minnesota student graduates with more than $30,000 in debt after 4 years, according to the Institute for College Access and Success, putting us at 4th highest in the nation for debt.
It's completely backwards that they would rely on us, for the future and for the betterment of this government and our society, but at the same time, lock us up in chains to the point where we can't even contribute back.
I'm not sure when my tuition will be entirely paid off. I mean, the loans covered a few of them, but I think I will be completely out of debt probably by like 35.
And how old are you now?
I am 23.
The main loan options that students have and what we tend to recommend most to students would be Stafford federal loans. The reason we recommend these for students is there isn't an application process. If students are enrolled in school, they're going to be eligible for these Stafford loans. One large opportunity that a lot of students forget to look at would be their local scholarship. And you kind of forget to go back to where you grew up and checking with your high school to see if there's any scholarships, checking with any organizations you're involved in. We find that students have the most luck when they're looking at those local scholarships. After all the free aid is figured out, then we start looking at what their overall balance might be and can talk through different options of whether it's using savings, setting up a payment plan, or looking at loan options.
In addition to aid and loans, more students are taking on part-time jobs to help with college costs, according to the census. At 20 hours per week, Minnesota has among the most students working while in school.
I currently have a wage that's allowing me to keep myself afloat, while at the same time my loans are growing. I'm not able to really pay the interest on those loans right now. If you're trying to pay back student loans, if you're trying to begin to save for retirement, if you have children, if you have medical bills, so on and so forth, that's not really gonna meet those needs.
Even though loans have been increasingly crippling students and their families, in 2010, college graduates earned 50% more than did young adults who completed only high school, and 22% more than did those with associate degrees, according to American Student Assistance.
When I made my first real resume that didn't have any high school stuff on it, all of it that had been taken off, it was my first real legit resume. I felt good about it because I felt like I had a lot of experiences through Augsburg that I was able to put on there that made me look like I was qualified to really, seek a job in the field that I wanted. So that was really positive. I did feel like I was prepared. But then the problem is that you're competing with 20, 30, 100 other people that feel the same way.
A lot of the jobs that I looked at did require a few years of experience in the field.
It can be a really stressful situation because it's like, how are you supposed to have experience and you just graduated with a degree? Where am I supposed to get this experience from?
Oh, I waited quite a while after I graduated to get a call back. I applied to places in my field, and even to this day I've made those connections, but I haven't necessarily been hired on in those fields. But it took, I would say, maybe 5 months before I even was able to do like a second or third interview in any job after college.
Being a recent college grad and finding a job is hard from the standpoint of someone who hires professionally and from the standpoint of a former student.
I think you really do have to do a good job when you're in school of trying to connect to the professional world. So when I talk to hiring managers right now, they say absolutely it's good to have a college degree. They wouldn't argue against it, but they really are zeroing in on, what platform do you use? Do you have the skills to master that?
Everything's getting sophisticated, and it's becoming such a niche market that you have to really be specific from the get-go and know what you want to get out of college, or you'll be so far in debt you'll never get out.
I'm a big proponent actually of having a liberal arts educational background. I think it exposed me to a lot of ideas, a lot of good foundational thinking, because my career has taken me in a whole bunch of different directions that I never would have imagined 25 years ago. When I went to school, I had 3 internships. I think people looked at me at the time and thought that's kind of crazy, but I needed a lot of internships because I wasn't getting the vocational training as a journalist.
Not everyone knows that it's great to have 2 to 3 internships. Not everyone knows that your internship should be directly related to what you want to do when you graduate.
Intelligence by itself doesn't mean anything if you're just regurgitating, the things you already learned. You have to be able to think critically. You have to be able to think creatively.
Serious reform is needed to widen access and make our higher education system sustainable. Our government will have to implement a system to support and ease the burden on the borrowers now paying off the current $1.2 trillion in student loan debt. We also have to adjust state funding and financial aid programs to keep up with the rising cost of education. Without these major reforms, entire generations will be left behind.
We as citizens don't realize the amount of power that we have.